We all know what these fuzzy creatures are. Some of us may even be owners of them. Clearly, we know that dogs know their own owners. But what more can they do? To find out, we did a presentation on human recognition in dogs. Through the domestication of dogs, dogs are now able to understand social cues given off by humans as we have learned in class. But to what extent can dogs really understand humans? Surprisingly, dogs are able to understand who is a generous person compared to a selfish person, just based on the fact of giving them food. Studies show that if you are more likely to give your dog food that is presented to them, then you will be identified as generous. On the other hand, if you are one to tease your dog with food, you will be identified as selfish. Studies also mention that if you are categorized as either selfish or generous, dogs will also assume that other people who have similar characteristics as you, like gender, are also selfish or generous. This is amazing because based on behavior of humans, dogs are able to form opinions on what type of person you may be. And overall, dogs would rather be around generous people. So if you like to tease your dog with food, please stop. Because you're making other dogs think that people who are also the same gender as you, or have similar characteristics as you, are selfish as well. And clearly, all we want is dogs to love us.
Dogs are also well known for their strong sense of smell, but can they actually smell the difference between humans? As it turns out, they can very easily distinguish between the armpit smell of their handler and that of a stranger. In fact, the caudate nucleus, the part of the brain that associates with positive expectations, was maximally stimulated during an fMRI of a dog's brain when smelling the scent of a familiar human, showing that humans play an important role in the lives of dogs as well. Now that we know that dogs can differentiate between familiar and unfamiliar humans, is it possible for them to distinguish between two people that have the highest chemical similarity possible? When testing whether dogs can distinguish between two consecutively presented sets of identical twins, the dogs showed no indication of perceiving a difference. However, in a simultaneous tracking experiment, where a well-trained Alsatian was tasked with following the trail of one twin and not the 4 trails of the other, it initially followed the wrong trail for 50 meters, but then ultimately got back on track to find the correct twin. Good boy.
Another ability that dogs have is an impressive sense of hearing. We know from previous research that dogs can recall their owner's face upon hearing their owner's voice. Results suggest that dogs can picture an internal representation of their owner's face when they hear their owner's voice. Dogs have a highly sensitive auditory system. Because of this, dogs sometimes use vocal cues in order to interact with their owners. It is assumed that dogs can discriminate between people by their voices. Results in a different study show that dogs rely on acoustic parameters of voices to cooperate with their owner and recognize them. We can conclude that dogs also take a human's tone of voice into account when humans point at something. Dogs use contextual information to follow a pointing gesture, including the human's tone of voice. Dogs also have the ability to use auditory cues to find hidden food. Dogs are multimodal and use many different means, including vocal cues, to comprehend human communication.
Adding to the multimodal model, another ability we found that dogs utilize is differential lateralization. We found previous research that wanted to explore if dogs were sensitive to facial expressions. Because dogs have been cohabiting with humans for so long, surely they have evolved to be sensitive to facial cues. The scientists explored this concept by videotaping the dogs as they were shown pictures of conspecific and human faces of differing balance and then analyzed the dog's gaze behavior. The results showed that dogs, like the horses we learned about early in the semester, show a left gaze bias for negative balance and a right gaze bias for positive. Other research we looked at showed us that the basic mechanisms for facial recognition are likely hardwired into their brain. The next time you're scolding your dog, notice if it tends to look down and to the left.
All in all, dogs are smarter than you think. Through these studies, we have concluded that dogs do have the ability of human recognition through various methods like visual, auditory, and olfactory cues. Hopefully you learned something today and or liked our dog pictures.